Today I present to you what may be the #1 weirdest car I have ever reviewed on my channel, the 2018 Vanderhall Venice. Now, Vanderhall is a company that's based out of Utah, and they produce all sorts of cool cars like the Speedster, the Laguna, the Venice, which is what we see here, and the all-electric Edison. And basically, they're all just different versions of the same car that we see here. What's really interesting about it, though, is that it only has 3 wheels. Each of their models, in fact, only has 3 wheels. And the reason they left off the 4th wheel is to give it a much more dynamic sort of handling to it, a really cool look, and most importantly, it allows them to circumvent a lot of normal road laws and regulations. So they don't have to put airbags in this thing, although in some states you may be required to have a motorcycle license and a helmet to operate it. So with all that background information out of the way, let's hop right into the review. To power the 2 front wheels, this Venice has a 1.4 liter turbocharged inline 4-cylinder engine from General Motors, which should be good for 200 horsepower and 200 pound-feet of torque. Now, those numbers may not sound that big, but you've also got to consider that this is an extremely small car. The base curb weight is just 1,520 pounds, so 200 horsepower should be way more than enough. You could probably even do a bit of a burnout, although it would look weird because it is front-wheel drive. Now, really the only thing I don't like about the powertrain is that it has an automatic transmission, a 6-speed automatic. And I'm kind of left to wonder why they didn't put a manual. Now, you can get an automatic that has a manual mode in it. That's an extra option that costs more, but there's no full manual car. And that really surprises me because, as you can tell, this car is meant to be enjoyed on the road. Its sole purpose is to have a fun driving experience, and a manual transmission is such an integral part of the driving experience. I'm really shocked that they don't offer a manual transmission. Now, I would love to show you guys what that powertrain does look like, but unfortunately, to take the hood off, you actually have to unscrew 8 bolts, so 4 on each side, and then lift the enormous hood off, so probably can't show it to you today. Vanderhall claims 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds and a top speed of over 130 miles per hour. Most impressively, however, they say it can take turns at 1 G of lateral grip, which is extremely impressive for a car with only 3 wheels. Which brings me to the next problem. It may be able to perform that well, but I probably wouldn't be comfortable taking it to that kind of performance, because you've got to imagine with 1 less wheel, the stability of the car all around has been reduced that much, and it may be able to do that, but I don't think I would be comfortable doing that with only 1 wheel in the back. From the outside, you can see the Venice is a really cool looking car. Kind of reminds me of a boat, actually. Although when you compare it to its main competitor, the Polaris Slingshot, which I did a review of a couple months ago, you can check it out right there if you're interested. It all of a sudden doesn't look that great because the Slingshot is an incredibly futuristic, sporty looking car, and the Venice is a little bit more retro styled, which is really cool, but not really my style. I would probably go for the Polaris. But it does have a lot of nice touches to it. You can see a really long, low hood. The whole car is actually only 4.5 inches off the ground, which gives it a very low center of gravity, just like the Slingshot. Up front, though, you can see it has a really big black grille that gives it a really nice look to it. The headlights are big and round and are hidden just behind that front grille. On the side, of course, you got these big exposed wheels with 18-inch rims as standard. 19 inches are actually optional for the front, and you can get a 20-inch rim in the wheel. Yes, that's singular. There's only 1 rear wheel. On the side, you can see it's got some stripes and the Vanderhall sign and a side exit exhaust, which actually gives it a really cool exposed kind of mechanical look to it. Really love that feature. In the back, like I just said, there's only 1 wheel, which is really the part that's probably going to catch most people's eye when they see this car. As you can see, the interior really follows that boat-like styling to it with all the waterproof materials, the retro gauges, and the wooden steering wheel. I like the overall design of it, and the space inside is actually really large. You'd be surprised how much footwell space there is. I'm just over 6 foot, and I fit perfectly well. What I don't like about the interior, though, is that everything kind of feels a little bit cheap, of course, because it has to be waterproof, but I feel like they could have made the materials a little bit better. I'm not going to complain about the seats. They're really comfortable, and they probably couldn't fit anything bigger than this in the car, and it has to be waterproof and all that, so I understand why these aren't like super nice leather, but the steering wheel is kind of a big disappointment, because maybe on camera it looks great because of the wooden design, but when you're in here, it just feels fake and plasticky and small, and I really don't like it. I do like the gauge cluster though. It's got a really retro styling to it. I keep using that word retro, but retro and boat style, those are really the two things that describe this car best in my opinion. As you can see, there's also a lot of buttons here that don't really show what they do, but it has Bluetooth connectivity and air conditioning. So that's basically what all those control. Although if you look in the owner's manual of the car, the second button from the left here actually does absolutely nothing. It's just there for styling, which again is a really interesting decision to put a fake button in there. The gear selector here is shoved kind of between the seats and a little bit low down. If you're not actually driving the car, you're just sitting in it, it's a little bit in the way of your leg, but if you were actually keeping your feet on the pedals like you should be when you're driving, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. Now this is a gear selector, not a gear shifter, because it is the automatic car. If you opt for the manual mode in the car, then you can pull it back one tick farther and use a stick on the left side of the car to actually shift gears. It's probably a sequential transmission. Really interesting decision to put it on the left side of the car because it's built and sold here in the United States, where all of us drivers are used to shifting with our right arm. Again, just another reason why I wish they had put an actual manual transmission option with no automatic option, because then they could have put it on the right side of the driver like all of us are used to. And if you don't opt for it, again, you just get kind of this weird plastic plate with a couple bolts on it shoved right next to you. Again, that probably wouldn't be there if they had a real manual option for the car. But all around, it is a pretty nice interior. I do like the design of it all and the way it feels when you're inside. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, comment below, and go ahead and check out my channel because I've got a ton of exotic supercar and hypercar reviews up. So remember to subscribe, and if this video gets enough likes, I'll come back and do a review of the Vanderhall all-electric Edison model. Pretty interesting, so make sure to give it that thumbs up.